I went into the Drifter blind, expecting a grounded story, the kind where death gives you space to reflect and try again. It does let you try again, just not in the way you expect. In the Drifter, death takes you back just far enough to keep going, but each death isn't a correction, it's momentum. You're not undoing the past, you're being carried through it. You die quickly, often unfairly and repeatedly. Not so you can fix what went wrong, but so the story can continue moving in only one direction it allows. The Drifter isn't about avoiding death, or even overcoming it. It's about understanding that death has to happen again and again for you and for everyone to move forward at all. The Drifter is an Aussie-noir point-and-click mystery developed by Powerhoof. We're placed in the shoes of Mick Carter, a man with no fixed address and no desire to stay in one place for long, no matter the reason. Mick stumbles onto the story of a century when he discovers that homeless people, like him, are going crazy and being kidnapped. He soon realises it runs much deeper than that when he is forced into a scenario where death is revealed to be more of a speed bump than the end. With this revelation, Mick, and therefore we, need to unravel the mysteries of where this ability came from, who is behind the plight of the homeless, and can dying fix what has come before? A well-written cast of characters and a small but dense world pushes us forward to answer those very questions, as we are constrained to try and try and try again. From the moment this game boots up, the tone is set. If, like me, you're a fan of dark cyberpunk/80s synth music, you will feel what the Drifter is going for. It opens with a sound that brings dread, the anticipation of danger, but morphs and expands, bringing a new feeling of determination that cuts through that initial horror. This very first piece of music sets up our emotional journey through the game. We click play game and see what awaits us.
I jumped the car back in Breaker's Cut. Told myself I'd never come back. Oh well, shit. Here I am.
Straight away, the menu disappears as we seamlessly transition into the opening scene, a train barreling along the tracks. Narration begins from who we can only assume is the main protagonist, Mick Carter, and this is prevalent throughout the game as a way of breaking up the gameplay to tell the story reminiscent of old noir detective movies. There's a gruffness to the narration that indicates that the main character is not just recounting events, but is currently living through them, feeling every moment. The train comes to a stop and we find ourselves inside the train car, seemingly alone. We take a look around the car to find out what little we can about the world we find ourselves in. Picking up a nearby tarp reveals another person trying to sleep with the humdrum of the freight car in the background. Another drifter like us, I suppose. We should try and open the doors and see what's going on. It wouldn't be good if an inspection is carried out. We really shouldn't be on this train. The doors are locked. We can't get to the vent at the top of the car, so we try waking the homeless man to help us open the door.
I fall back as the iron bar whistles past my face. Hey, watch it!
Not friendly, it seems. Throwing the tarp over the erratic man, we manage to get hold of the iron bar and use it to force open the door. Ah shit, security has caught us. Shockingly, security aren't playing around here as they quickly dispatch of the guy with a shower of bullets and a shower of blood. We need to get out of here quick time. Diving across the entrance of the train car, we make our way to the vent at the top and jump off the side of the tracks. Battered and bruised, but safe for now. We try and contact our sister, but soon run out of juice mid-call. Looking through our tattered bag, we find our charging cable. There must be some way of charging our phone around here. Let's go and ask that guy over there. Turns out it's Bill, an old friend of ours. This is where the dialogue choices are revealed to us. Represented by small images across the bottom of the screen, we get to choose which topics we want to discuss. The interface is clean, and mousing over each choice we get a description of the topic itself, though not exactly the words Mick will use. This small choice does a lot of heavy lifting. By hiding the specific phrasing, the Drifter keeps conversations feeling uncertain and human, not mechanical. You're not selecting dialogue so much as committing to an intention and only discovering the outcome once Mick speaks. It mirrors the game's wider relationship with time. You can point yourself in a direction, but you never have complete control over how things unfold. After we have a look around the car, Bill tells us we can use it to charge our phone and he hands us the keys. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. Why on earth would something just work? We hunt around for some conveniently placed petrol and pop that in the car. That's still not enough to get the car to start, so let's see what's in this dark tunnel. Here we come across a reporter called Angela Grace. She's trying to get information on a string of recent disappearances amongst the homeless and the rise of people seemingly going crazy, like that guy on the train. We better keep that in mind. Not only that, but there's some guy called the Bucket Butcher knocking about. Are they all connected? We can ask Bill about that. We need Angela's knife, so we ask Bill for some information on what has been going on. He tells us about
Melingi.
This nugget of information should get us that knife. Indeed it does. Maybe we can now finally get that car working to charge our...
Oh, get off me, you! Ah! Let me go!
The hell?
So these Melingi are real, and they have Angela. No sign of Bill though. With nothing we can do, we're captured, tied up and thrown into the water. We struggle to free ourselves and the journey comes to an end.
My lungs coils its way to my brain, and I know that I am dying. The cold blackness falls away, leaving only nothing. And I know, somehow, I am dead. But then, every neuron of my brain firing all at once, tearing apart, twisting out in all dimensions, then contracting, speed of light, back into nothing. Sudden icy cold shocks me awake.
Somehow that's not the end and we get another chance. Getting the bag off of our head, we see that we aren't the only victim of the Melingi here. We eventually free ourselves and head to the surface, but the feeling of dying still lingers in our mind.
But I am no longer dead.
Following the events of Chapter 1, the Drifter makes something immediately clear. Drowning wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a reload. It wasn't a mercy. It was design. There is no traditional game over screen, no punishment beyond the act itself. Instead, death folds back on itself, snapping Mick to a moment just before catastrophe. Not to undo what has happened, but to force us to approach it differently. It's disorienting at first. We've been trained for decades to read death as failure, as the game pushing back against us for getting something wrong. Here, that language is stripped away. There's no reprimand, no loss of progress, just a quiet implication. Try again, but this time you know more. The answer to that early confusion, was that scripted? Is yes and no. Yes, because the story demands it. No, because you still had agency in getting there. The line between narrative inevitability and player responsibility blurs, and that blur is intentional. Death is both a mechanic and narrative device. It pushes the plot forward while teaching us how to survive inside it. Each failure reveals information, each attempt sharpens our understanding. We're not rewinding to erase mistakes, we're rewinding to learn from them, and that changes everything. It reframes what progress looks like. Progress isn't a clean run, it's accumulated knowledge. The game trusts that you will carry lessons forward, even if the world doesn't visibly change. Death stops feeling catastrophic, it becomes procedurable, administrative. A necessary checkpoint on the road to understanding what's really going on. But here's the crucial part. It's avoidable. That tension matters. If death were mandatory, it would feel scripted. If it were rare, it would lose its function. Instead, it sits in the middle. A looming possibility that you can outmaneuver with enough awareness. Most scenarios can be cleared without dying, which means death is never required, but it is expected. The game is built around the assumptions that you will fail first, that you will panic, that you will misjudge, and when you realize survival is possible, something shifts. You stop stumbling through spaces and start mapping them. You begin to anticipate where things might go wrong. The environment stops feeling hostile in an abstract sense and starts feeling readable. The pace accelerates. Your brain stops treating this like a puzzle and starts treating it like a threat. You act faster, you click faster. You think less and react more. It taps into something primal, the instinct to escape, not to optimize. You're not trying to be clever, you're trying to stay alive. And when you finally clear a sequence cleanly, it doesn't feel like you solved a riddle, it feels like you survived something.
The creature wraps its black limbs around the beam and rips the heavy wood apart. The roof's coming down! After a moment, I realise I'm somehow still alive.
The Drifter is excellent at concealing its next move. Many times the choices made don't turn out the way you might think and results in another death. Not knowing what is coming after you make your choices is what keeps you on your toes and moving forward. There's a constant low-level uncertainty. Even when you think you've understood the pattern, the game withholds just enough to keep you cautious. This has a dual effect on you. First, it heightens anxiety. When the wrong move can spell death, forcing you to retry it over and over again, you get a feeling not of frustration, but of restlessness. You know that your choice is going to have an outcome, but is it the outcome you want? You hesitate for a fraction longer before clicking. You scan the screen a little more carefully. The repetition isn't numbing, it's sharpening. Second, death sometimes feels unfair. Instinct kicks in and you make the choice you think will lead to survival, then boom, dead. You're now armed with a little more information that you can make different choices without having to rely on those primal instincts again. This unfairness lasts only until you realize you can make it through scenarios without needing to die for more information. That realization is the turning point. What first felt arbitrary starts to feel structured. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared.
Wow, you seem to be doing okay, boss.
Oh, he's a friend of yours, Mick. Well, then you're a friend of mine too.
On the surface, The Drifter comes off as an Aussie-noir pulp thriller, gruff narration, shadowy conspiracies, bodies piling up in forgotten places. It borrows the language of stories where the world is rotten and the protagonist is already halfway to the grave. But The Drifter isn't interested in inevitability, it's interested in iteration. It uses noir as a frame, not a thesis. The mood is heavy, the lighting is harsh, the narration carries that familiar wariness. Yet underneath that aesthetic, the game is doing something less fatalistic. In traditional noir, death is final. It seals fate. It confirms the decay of the world and the futility of resisting it. The Drifter flips that logic. The world continues after what should be the end. Mick continues. There's no moral corrosion creeping into him with each failure, no spiral into despair. Instead, each death sharpens his resolve. Fatality doesn't close the story, it reopens it. He doesn't become more cynical with every reset. If anything, he becomes more focused, more deliberate. The genre suggests cynicism. The Drifter suggests persistence. If you want to believe the world is irreparably rotten, Malinji executing drifters, people disappearing without consequence, but as layers peel back, most characters reveal themselves to be sympathetic, even quietly hopeful. The darkness is aesthetic. The forward motion is thematic. Even the conspiracies feel less like proof of decay and more like problems waiting to be understood. The Drifter dressed like a tragedy but behaves like a survival story. It leans into the shadows, but it never commits to hopelessness.
I understand how difficult this must be. I want you to feel you can trust us.
Huh. No chance.
The Drifter moves with urgency, but it rarely feels rushed. Scenes escalate quickly, often dropping Mick into situations that spiral out of control before you've had time to properly assess them. The pacing mirrors the experience of being hunted or cornered. Information comes in fragments, danger arrives suddenly, and decisions must be made without full understanding. This is important because the game doesn't treat death as dramatic crescendo, it treats it as interruption. Moments that would traditionally act as climaxes instead become pivots. A chase ends not with a triumph or defeat, but with a reset that demands adaptation. The forward momentum never fully stalls, it simply reroutes. Structurally, chapters tend to end on rupture, a capture, a revelation, a fatal mistake. Rather than resolving tension, the game compounds it. Each reset carries retained knowledge, and that knowledge subtly alters the rhythm of subsequent attempts. What first felt chaotic gradually becomes passable. The pacing doesn't slow down, you just become sharper within it. That shift is crucial. Early on, the game feels reactive. Later, it feels strategic. Not because the structure changes, but because you do. The repetition compresses uncertainty. Familiar spaces become efficient routes. Conversations become calculated. Situations that once felt overwhelming become manageable. The result is a game that feels fast without being frantic. It trusts the player to internalize its loops and tighten their own performance. In doing so, it reinforces the central idea. Death isn't the end of momentum, it's a mechanism that sustains it.
Almost. Close one. I think I can. Oh, God! I don't wait to see if they follow me back down. And I'm 2 blocks away when it sinks in that I'm still alive.
The Drifter won't appeal to everyone, and it doesn't try to. If you're looking for branching dialogue that radically alters the narrative, you won't find it here. The story is tightly controlled. Your agency lies in navigation and timing rather than authorship. You're uncovering a mystery, not rewriting it. It's also not a game that rewards passivity. While the mechanics are simple on the surface, success relies on attentiveness. You need to remember routes, anticipate danger, and think spatially under pressure. If repetition frustrates you, especially when tied to failure, this loop may feel punishing rather than empowering. But for players who enjoy tightly constructed narratives, focused scope, and systems that reinforce theme rather than distract from it, the Drifter is remarkably cohesive. It understands what it wants to be and commits to it. There's very little bloat. Every mechanic feeds back into the same core idea. It's for people who enjoy tension that resolves through understanding, not luck. For those who like feeling themselves improve within a fixed structure, and for anyone who appreciates that gameplay and narrative are pulling in the same direction.
And now we see it in action. Pop! There it goes. Ah!
What lingers after finishing the Drifter isn't shock value or spectacle, it's the feeling of movement, of having pushed through something that initially felt insurmountable. By framing death as a tool rather than a failure state, the game reshapes how you approach danger. You stop fearing the reset and start extracting value from it. Mistakes become data. Panic becomes rehearsal. The story progresses not in spite of death, but because of it. That design choice reframes the genre it borrows from. Noir traditionally leans towards inevitability, towards protagonists trapped by circumstance or their own flaws. The Drifter rejects that fatalism. It acknowledges darkness but refuses stagnation. Mick isn't spiraling, he's refining. There's something quietly optimistic in that. Not in the events themselves, the world remains harsh, but in the structure underneath them. Progress is always possible. Understanding is always within reach. Even when the worst happens, you're not locked out of forward motion. The Drifter dresses like a tragedy but behaves like a survival story. And by the time the credits roll, death no longer feels like an ending, it feels like part of the path. It doesn't ask whether death can fix the past, it shows death is the only way forward.
You stayed.
I stayed. I'll stay. Zara nods, and I smile.
The Drifter is the best game I've played so far in 2026. So far, it's the only 10 on my spreadsheet of games that have completed this year. It came recommended to me by a friend at work, and I'm glad I listened because it was an incredible journey to go on. Everything just hit the right spot for me. The music, the puzzles, the story, it all came together fantastically. I'd like to play some more Powerhoof games on itch. They have a few from game jams on there, much smaller experiences. On top of that, this game really sparked that persistent urge I have to make my own game. And Powerhoof has a Unity tool called PowerQuest that I'd like to try out, so maybe if I get time I'll have a play around. But what did you think of the Drifter? Did you love it as much as I did? Did you manage to make it through without dying, or did you leave bodies all over the place? What surprised you the most? Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this analysis of the Drifter. You may also enjoy my analysis of the excavation of Hobbs Barrow and how it gives you a full sense of control. You can see that right here. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you there in a second. Bye bye.